We have a reticular activating system in our brain that filters out unnecessary information. So this is the part of our brain that's observing everything and saying, okay, I'm only going to let into my conscious awareness what is the most important. And how do we decide what's the most important? Well, based on what we're thinking the most about and giving it as evidence, we care about this. So if we care a lot about what other people think of us, we are going to hear a lot about what other people think of us.
This is By Joyan Season 2. I'm your host, Joyan Chan, and every Wednesday we bring you inspiring stories, powerful message, and fun conversations with me and my special guests and friends, and it's my personal mission to empower you to live and lead a life with joy. This podcast is for you if you're looking for more joy, courage, passion, and purpose in your life. Now let's dive into today's episode and get ready to laugh, learn, and live your life to the fullest. Joining us today is a worthiness and law of attraction coach who has guided hundreds of women to rewire self-ridicule into deep inner support and lasting confidence, helping them create lives that feel peaceful, aligned, and truly fulfilling. So she's here today to empower you to elevate your self-worth, build true inner support, and attract more of what you deeply want. So guys, help me welcoming our very special guest today, Julie Wind Elswyk. Welcome to the show, Julie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Joyan.
Since you are the self-worth and worthiness and law of attraction coach, how would you define worthiness? How would you define self-worth? And why do you think it's such a crucial foundation for manifesting what we want through law of attraction?
Yes, yeah, it's a great question. So when we come to this planet, when we're all babies and we enter into this world, I believe we all have a blueprint where we are enough. We know our self-worth. We cry for when we're hungry. We're not afraid to ask for what we need. There's no embarrassment. There's no shame. And that blueprint tends to get tainted over time by just the world and imperfections and people trying to protect in maybe ways that aren't helpful. Us trying to protect ourselves, trying to belong. We have an ingrained need to belong as a part of survival in childhood. And a lot of times we can start ridiculing ourselves or punishing ourselves as a means to protect ourselves, to try to belong. So these are things that can affect our self-worth. So self-worth is what we have when we come to this world. We have this knowing that we are sovereign, that we are worthy, that our needs are worthy of being met. We're not afraid to be ourselves when we're tiny people, to ask for what we need, to have interests that we don't care if they're accepted or not. We just have our own interests and our own drives. And really that's the state that I like to bring my clients back to, and that my clients crave going back to, is that state of I am who I am. I am meant to be unique. I am meant to follow my dreams. I'm meant to follow my intuition in a way that loves myself well and loves others well, in a way that's good and uplifting and feels whole. So that sense of worthiness is what we work on. A lot of times it comes out for my clients when they're not aligned with their worthiness. It comes out as just self-ridicule, as lacking confidence, as people pleasing, as anxiety, wanting to play small in the world, having ruminations about social interactions. All those things tell us that they're not aligned with their worth. If they're not striving and aiming for what they really want. And then to answer your question, when you're lined up with your worth, then you can so much more easily line up with what you want in the world. because all of a sudden you're worthy of that promotion. You're worthy of that relationship you want. You're worthy of the next thing you want to create, more abundance, more money, whatever it is. A lot of times, what's holding us back from really reaching and matching up energetically, which is where the law of attraction comes into play, when we're not matching up energetically, it's typically a worthiness issue. So we work on that first.
Right. So, how do we start working on our self worth or worthiness if we are currently struggling with low self worth and low self esteem, everything that you just mentioned? Like, where do we start?
Yeah. Well, I have a free download on my website. That's julievcoaching.com. I'll just walk you through the steps because we can do this on our own as well. And the first step is really becoming aware of where we are feeling unworthy. One way we can do that is to first recognize when you're not feeling good and then say, what am I telling myself right now? What am I speaking to myself? If I could, because a lot of times our inner thoughts don't come out in full, nice sentences to decipher. So if we can just say, what am I telling myself in this moment? If I could put it into one sentence, let's say you're at work and you're not feeling good about something. If you could put it into one sentence, I'm telling myself, I didn't show up with authority in that meeting. I looked ridiculous, or whatever those words are. First, identify it. And that awareness sheds light on how we're talking to ourselves. We, inside of us, is the only voice we have to live with all day long, which is why when we are cruel to ourselves, hard on ourselves, it breeds anxiety, it breeds exhaustion, because we have to live with that voice all day long. So the first step is becoming aware. Sometimes that's just getting quiet, getting quiet and taking a walk without music or earbuds, just being quiet to the point that we start to recognize what our internal dialogue is even saying. So that's really the first step. And then when we do identify it, I think it's important to recognize that this voice inside you is not the enemy. It has an intention. It, even if it doesn't feel good, this voice inside you usually intends to protect you in some way, to take care of you in some way. If you drill down on it and say, why? Why would you want to protect me by saying this? A lot of times what will come up is, well, I don't want you to look ridiculous or be ostracized or be set apart. I'm afraid, I'm sort of speaking in two languages, but that's what I like to do with my coaching, is have my clients really speak to themselves as if their awareness is talking to itself. And a lot of times that inner voice is trying to protect us from some sort of pain and suffering. So if we can get to that intent, then we can really examine it, pick it apart a little bit. Even if this was relevant in your home life growing up, where you had to please a overly critical parent, is it still relevant now? Or is it hurting you now? Is this method of protecting you doing good anymore, even if it was at one point? And that's where we can thank it for what it has done for us at some point, trying to protect us, and say, but now it's time for a new way. Work with me on a new way because I'm not protected through this method anymore. And that's where we can start to really have compassion, soothe the fear that's inside us, and start to reprogram. When I say repetition, I believe that the brain is holding on to repeated thoughts, and that repeated thoughts create beliefs. So if something becomes repeated over time, the neural networks in our mind get really well used, and it becomes a very efficient pathway for us to think and believe. And this is how beliefs are created. We get an imprinting moment, something that maybe had some emotional charge, and then we repeat it and we think it over and over again, subconsciously or consciously. until it becomes a hardwired belief. Now, these beliefs can be undone, but they need to be evaluated and discredited. And then we need to do the exact same thing. We need to integrate some emotion and repetition into a new belief. I do think affirmations can be very powerful if there's something we can get on board with. In other words, if we have a belief that I'm not enough, or let's say I have a belief I'm a terrible mother. There's a judgment there, and that belief might have been trying to help me be better, right? And that was how I learned to shape myself, was through ridicule. Well, I can say, well, that doesn't work for me anymore. That breaks me down. It actually makes me a worse mother. So what I'm going to do is discredit that belief, talk to that belief and find a new way together. And then I'm going to say, what do I want my belief to be? Well, I want it to be, I'm a wonderful mother. But if you create an affirmation, I'm a wonderful mother, sometimes we can't jump from here to there so quickly. And our mind doesn't buy it. Well, it could work in baby steps over time. I think a much more efficient way is to create affirmations that are a step up, but that we can get on board with. So an affirmation might be, I'm trying my best today. Maybe we can't jump to I'm a bad mother to I'm a wonderful mother, but we can believe I'm trying my best today. And then we can baby step our way up with different affirmations that do eventually get to that, you know what, I'm a wonderful mother and I'm getting better every day and all those things. So that's how we can work with affirmations. Another way that I integrate repetition is through hypnotic recordings. I'm a hypnosis practitioner, and we will make just a little 10 to 15 minute recording at the end of some of our sessions. And these recordings will progress. So just like the affirmations progress their way up the ladder, our recordings progress their way up the ladder. And they are meant to evoke emotion. They're used with my clients' truths. So it's not me necessarily creating these recordings from scratch. It's based off of what my client desires and what they've really talked through in our session together. And it's just like a meditation. My client just sits back, relaxes, and lets go into this moment. And then I feed them the information that they want to integrate, that they want to set on repeat. And slowly over time, listening to this recording once a day, 10 to 15 minutes is all it takes to start to realize that their mind's changing, that their thoughts are starting to change, that when those old patterns come up, they catch it and are able to work with it quicker. And that's another way that I use repetition to create new beliefs.
How does since you study hypnosis, you're the practitioner, how does the mind actually learn and change at a deep level? I'm talking about permanent change. Is it
Yeah.
is it that our mind only change when it's relaxed, calm, in a calm state, relaxed state, or it can only change where there's an intense emotion, because that's when a belief is created, when there's like an event that happened, right, with an intense emotion.
Right.
So how does our mind, like, how does it work, how does it change?
Right. Yeah. Well, intense you really answered your own question. I mean, intense emotion really does impact us in a way that it needs to be digested and taken through a filter to glean from it what we're going to believe. If we don't intentionally go through that process, we are a default will kick in. Our body will and our minds will jump on board with however it interprets that situation. So if we have a traumatic event happen and we don't work through and digest that trauma, really look at it and feel it and allow it to have its say, and then be able to decide what filter we're going to file that away under. If we don't do that work in the moment, which many times we don't, then it will just impact our mind in a more fearful way, in a way that creates a belief that maybe we don't desire. That's where, we want to be intentional about the beliefs we're creating. And so if we can create emotion, recreate an emotion in an opposite direction to counteract that trauma, if we can redefine it through some coaching, can break it down, can kind of take some of the power away, shed the light on what's really going on here, and then decide what my client wants and create a new emotion around it. We will talk about what feels powerful to them. And it really is about emotional engagement. If someone listens to these recordings, even though hypnosis is a shortcut to wiring the brain, if they listen to these recordings with emotion, it will go so much faster, so much faster, because the emotion is what starts to really pair with the repetition and create something strong. The recording itself, when we do slow our brains down and in an active state, we're in what's called beta brain waves. And that's just the hertz range that our brain tends to resonate in and function in. If we are in beta, and that's the aware stage, that's you and I are in beta right now. We're paying attention to our external environment. There's not a lot of imprinting that happens in beta unless we have an intense emotion. But what we can do is slow the brain down into alpha or theta. Alpha is the daydreamy state that we are in naturally when we're maybe zoning out when we're taking a shower or driving a car. It's a natural state that happens every day, multiple times a day. And theta is an even deeper state where we are totally aware of just our internal state. It's what we're in when we're dreaming or in that more REM state. So theta is a deeper state, and then alpha is that daydreaming state where the internal and external world, we're aware of both. And then there's also delta, which is that deep sleep. So kids are in delta when they're born, primarily. Their brain waves are just moving very slowly. And when they move, oh gosh, I'm forgetting my age ranges here, but I believe it's somewhere around 2 years old. They'll move more into theta. And then eventually they move more into alpha. And they're in alpha until about the age of 12. So that's why kids that age, an 8-year-old can integrate language and math and learn things, music, so easily because their brain is kind of this sponge. So what we're doing when we put someone into that hypnotic state, which is simply just reducing their brain into an alpha or theta state where their internal state becomes more aware, we're bypassing the critical mind and getting into that state where they're more of a sponge to information, where they can integrate information more easily. And that really is a shortcut to integrating beliefs, especially when it's repeated and especially when we can add in some emotion. And truly, the clients I've worked with, they do report this is something that once it's birthed, it can't be put back. It's like they've changed and they can't undo what they have seen now. And this is a new way of living. It is a permanent change. Not only that, but if old wiring starts to kick in again, they know exactly what to do to start integrating and reinforcing the new beliefs again. Because our brain does prune. If we don't use certain wiring, it does prune it away. And so once we really integrate and are dedicated to this process, our quality of life just improves and our brain prunes and starts using new neural pathways that feel better to us, that are aligned with our worth, that are aligned with abundance, and starts to prune away those old messages that now it's not using anymore. So it is a beautiful process. I will say that any clients that I work with, it takes dedication. They get out of it what they put into it. So if they don't listen to their recording every day, they're not going to get the same results. They might get some results it might be 20%, 30% results, but it's not going to be the exact same results as if they would use that repetition and that emotion to actually do,
Mm.
make the change.
So for people who are not your clients yet, obviously people who are listening, what are some of
Yeah.
the daily practices they can do? Do you recommend any for them to start doing the work? You know,
Yeah.
something simple. You know, so that they can see some result, maybe 5% of the result.
Absolutely. And there are some very simple things you can do. For instance, if identify what you want. A lot of times we are not totally clear on what we want. And it has to be wholehearted. If it's not wholehearted, then you have some resistance there, that maybe some messages that need to be cleaned up. If you say, oh, I want $1 million, but then there's something in you that goes, ugh, what would my friends say? Or would I have disagreements with my partner about what to buy or whatever? So you need to wholeheartedly know what you want. And if you wholeheartedly want something and you think it's wholehearted, but there's a little resistance, look at what that is. Okay, what are these fears? Are they valid? And you can pick that apart yourself to be able to recognize what's holding you back. But yes, recognize what you wholeheartedly want. Secondly, I would say do what you can to just feel one step better. One step better. So if you identify that today I'm feeling a little low, let's say I'm just in a neutral or pessimistic state. And so I'm just below neutral. I'm sort of pessimistic. What could I do today that would just make me feel one notch better? We don't have to shoot for joy, but every time you just feel, I mean, joy is wonderful, but
I get what
hence
you
your
mean. Yes.
podcast, like, but we don't have to shoot straight for joy if it's too far of a jump, right? The goal is joy. Take one step. What would help me just feel less pessimistic today? Well, I think if I just went for a walk, I could just get to a neutral state. Or I could get to a state where I feel like, well, tomorrow will be better. And there, already you're bumped up to hope.
Mm.
And what this does in your life is your electromagnetic field and what you're putting out there to the world changes in frequency to a lighter vibration, to a higher frequency that is going to already attract better things into your life. So if we can all just look at, maybe it's a daily check-in every morning or every afternoon, set a timer for noon and just say, how am I feeling today? How am I feeling right now? And how can I bump it up one notch? Just one notch. If you're feeling angry, bumping up to pessimism is a huge jump, huge. Or even bumping up to blame is a jump from lightening your energy from anger. So there's this whole emotional scale that goes from total despair, it'll pass through anger, blame, pessimism, and it'll go around a neutral place. And then it will tip the scales and go to the places that feel good, like hope, optimism, and then excitement, joy, love, all those things. And so if we can just elevate one step, you're moving towards that tipping point where things start attracting to you that feel better. If we can just walk ourselves up the ladder by looking for what feels like relief, what feels like one step better, it'll change your life.
Talk to us about how our emotions attract people, circumstances, results into our lives.
Yes. It is about how we present ourselves to the world. We feel each other's energy. And just like trees are connected in the ground, and people, plants, animals, we have these ways of perceiving and talking to each other that don't make sense according to our five senses. One of these ways is everyone has experienced if you walk into a store and you'll get an eerie feeling or a good feeling or a light feeling or a dense feeling. If someone walks in the room, sometimes you don't even have to see someone walking in the room, but you'll feel a bit of heaviness or feel a bit of, it's their electromagnetic field. It's what we're putting out into our environment. So that starts with our emotions. Our emotions create a cascade of events. What triggers our emotions? Thoughts. So we really want to start with thoughts, but thoughts trigger our emotions, which create a cascade of events in our body chemically, and then put that out into our electromagnetic field, and others can feel it. I could give an example that if you were looking for someone to, say, work on your website, and you met with a couple different web designers, and someone has a lot of experience and they're very good. They're very good at what they do. But when you meet them, they just kind of have a down energy. What they're emitting out of them is a little bit like shoulders in, a little bit withdrawn. You're not going to get a feeling from that person like they're going to put everything into what you're creating.
Mm.
And if you meet with a different web designer that maybe has less experience, but they're excited about it, they're engaged with you, they're talking about it, they've got an excited energy, they're nice to be around because of that energy, you're going to want to give that person your business. It's just natural. And so that's what we're talking about with attraction. It has so many different aspects to it. It has this attraction aspect we're talking about where others can feel your energy and they want to match up with you when you're in a state of abundance, when you're in a state of excitement, when you're on the upper half of the above neutral of that emotional scale. That attracts things into your awareness. However, there's so many other aspects. I mean, we have a reticular activating system in our brain that filters out unnecessary information. So this is the part of our brain that's observing everything and saying, okay, I'm only going to let into my conscious awareness what is the most important. And how do we decide what's the most important? Well, based on what we're thinking the most about and giving it as evidence, we care about this. So if we care a lot about what other people think of us, we are going to hear a lot about what other people think of us. And it's not going to always be this positive thing. And when we care a lot about, the Jeep analogy is one that people use a lot. You know, if you are driving around town one day and someone asks, how many red Jeeps did you see today? You'd say, I'm not sure. But your unconscious knows. It's just that it filtered it out with your reticular activating system to tell you, well, that's not important. But if someone said, I'll give you $100 every time you see a red Jeep tomorrow, that next day, you're going to be like, I saw precisely 8 and it could have been 9 because it was far away. And you'd know exactly how many you saw because your reticular activating system all of a sudden says, this is important information. So what we focus on expands. What we focus on is what our brain will continue to bring awareness to. So if we're focused on opportunities always come to me, I am abundant in nature, your reticular activating system is going to pick up on potential opportunities in ways that you would not have previously without that way of thinking. So there's a few different things at play here, seen and unseen, as far as our own chemical brain and body, what we're putting out to the world, how other people are attracting to us. We resonate at a certain frequency. When a tuning fork resonates at that frequency and the other tuning forks around it don't, they don't vibrate when that tuning fork is hit. If it's hit at 400 hertz, none of the other tuning forks will vibrate. If there's another tuning fork at 400 hertz, it will vibrate when this one, the first one, is hit. So that's another way that we vibrate. We tend to resonate with others that are on our similar frequency. Now, if we're on a frequency of negativity, we will activate and resonate the negativity around us in others. If we're on a frequency of love, we will activate and resonate, just like those tuning forks, with the love around us. So that's a mouthful, but that's just a few of the avenues that we actually that attraction works.
Yeah. And so just to bring everything together, you talk about we need to first identify what we really want, right? And we all know most people, if they follow Tony Robbins, including me, with something that he always says is where energy flows, where focus goes, energy flows. So if we focus on first, we identify what we want, and then we focus on some what we want, right? But if deep down we don't believe we are worthy of it, like unconsciously we don't believe there is a story, right? Are we still gonna be attracting what we want if deep down we believe we are not worthy of it?
Yeah. Most likely not. We're muddying the waters when we have conflicting messages, because there's a subconscious message deep down that says I don't want that, and then there's our conscious message that says I do want that, and it's going to be a mixed signal. So even if that thing could eventually come into our lives, but we might lose it or sabotage it in some way, um, or be forced with, goodness, I have to clean up this resistance in me because I'm causing trouble with this new blessing in my life. So it will slow the process, if not hinder it completely or sabotage the process. Journaling is a great tool. Talking to yourself is a great tool. If you get clear on what you want, and oh, I want that new promotion, and there's any little inkling, we all learn differently, but if you feel something in your gut or in your chest or in your mind that paints a picture, that all of a sudden you see a picture of employees ridiculing you or talking behind your back or something, then there is a contaminant there that's really hindering your attraction of that promotion. So if you want a promotion at work and there's any of those little things inside you that go, oh, but it's going to be hard, or I'm going to work too many hours, or you just want to define out what your reservations are and then coach yourself through them. Is this really true? Does it have to be true? I can attract anything I want. The this world is limitless and there's limitless possibility. And does this have to be true? Really challenge your beliefs that are holding you back, and then come up with an affirmation or some sort of little reminders that you set up on your phone to contradict the messages behind that apprehension. So if I'm going for a promotion at work, but there's something inside me that says it's going to be too much work, is that really true? Does it have to be true? Look for evidence of people in high ranking places that don't work 60-hour weeks. They go home to their families or their lives, and they have a balanced life. They are calm. Look for evidence of that and start to convince yourself of the possibility. And then you can come up with these little affirmations that stair step your belief system up that ladder a little bit. Like, oh, anything is possible for me. It could be that general, just to help loosen the energy of I'm going to have to work too much. It can be anything is possible for me. You can look for evidence in your own life of how I've created amazing things before. I've done huge jobs in efficient ways many times in my life. Things are different for me. Like, you can start to stair step your way up in belief system, and looking for evidence again is very powerful. If it works for someone else, it can work for us. When the 4-minute mile was finally broken, 6 people did it in the same year. 7 people did it in the same year. That just shows that when we can look for evidence of something, our belief system can be greatly impacted.
Mm. And I believe we all know that one of the biggest limiting beliefs that woman has is I'm not good enough, right? Whether it's I'm not slim enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not sexy enough, I don't know, right? And so how does that, like I'm not good enough, affect our vibrational energy?
That feeling will run its course through your body and into your energy field and attract more of the same. So let's say the relationships you've attracted under the feeling and energy of I'm not good enough, they will reinforce the feeling because vibrationally they will resonate with where you're at. When we do change, when we increase our worthiness,
Mm.
those relationships or whatever's in our life often has to change with us or evolve with us in some way, or be, you know, ended if it's not something that serves you for your future going forward. You are attracting, if you look at your life and you say, my partner doesn't respect me and my kids don't listen to me, and I feel like I'm bulldozed over at work, there's something that you're putting out. There's a belief about yourself that probably needs to be shifted, because we do create and attract how others treat us in general. Now, is there sometimes we run into something messy along the way? That can happen too. But in general, if you have these themes in your life that are upsetting or not the way you want to move forward, you probably have some beliefs that need and worthiness that needs to be looked at. Starting with that woman who just feels like she's not enough, I would enter into a practice of imagining that you are your own best friend. And how do you want a really sincere, wonderful best friend to talk to you? And just starting to practice that little bits at a time. You can do it with journaling. You can write out, take one color pen and write out all your frustrations. I'm not performing well enough, or I'm not slim enough, or whatever the frustration is. And then take a different color pen and imagine that you have a really good friend in the room with you. And what would she say to you? And then I want you to journal that.
Mm.
You know, sweetie, you are trying really hard at work and you're a very intelligent person. You're working hard and you are good enough. Why don't you go and do something for yourself today? Why don't you go and take a good long walk or a bath? And remember all the good things that you have inside you. You know, you can even list your good qualities,
Yeah.
and write down one thing you like about yourself each day and just read it at night before you go to bed. Read the whole list.
Yeah.
What, even if it's very general, you know, by the end of 2 months, if you have 60 things you've written down that you've been able to conjure up that you like about yourself, and you're reading 60 things at night, it's going to start to change your worthiness. It's going to start to affect you and what you're focused on. And what you focus on expands, right? That's where our focus goes, energy flows, right? So that just starting the momentum in that direction, there are a few of these tools you can use, because you are creating your life. And if there are real themes in your life of discontentment, it is time to look at you and how you're valuing yourself or talking to yourself.
Yeah.
And that's where my inner critic workbook can be a great tool to get started as well. It's a free download.
Yeah. And then not just that, you have shared a lot of, many things that people can start, working on their self-worth and confidence, affirmations, what else? The inner critic workbook and what I just mentioned, right? So you have shared so many great tips. Thank you so much for that. Is there anything you really want to talk about? Perhaps I didn't ask you, didn't let you.
Hmm. Oh, I feel like this has been such a fun conversation. It's been really fun to chat with you. And I think the last thing that I would really like to say is that the quality of your life is worth it, you know, for all of us. A lot of times we will settle for how we've felt in the past and consider it normal. But joy is accessible to everyone. And it's about working our way in that direction. And the work is worth it. It's worth it. It might feel unfamiliar And our brain tends to tell us if something's unfamiliar, then, go back to the old wiring. But that overcoming and perseverance to integrate new, unfamiliar messages is worth it. It's so worth it. Because if you can change your life just 10%, you are giving 10% better to the world. You're giving 10% better to your health. You're giving 10% better to your mental health. You're adding most likely to the years of your life. You're detoxing your body by 10%. You're able to create this cascade of events around you by just being that much happier. If the world was full of people who knew their self-worth and were out for the good of not only themselves but of the world, of that's a side effect that comes from creating more happiness, is that you want other people to feel happier. You bring good to the world, and it can feel like a hurdle to get started, but I would just say that it's possible. So just to understand that this is possible for you, maybe it's through me. Maybe go download my inner critic workbook on julievcoaching.com, sign up for a free consult, but maybe it's through any other avenue. Sign up for a yoga class. You go start doing art if you want to do art. Go for a walk outside. Do these things that are for you that can start to get that one step better on the emotional scale, and you will see improvements. You will see that not only flow through you, but then out to the world around you. It's big work.
It's a big work. And I personally do believe that starting is not the hardest, like, but doing the work, like continuing on the journey, is like the hardest ever.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, the great thing about this, that's true. A lot of times I'll have a wonderful first session with my clients, and then
exactly.
about a week and a half or 2 weeks in, all of a sudden their brain will start resisting the recordings and get really restless and say, oh, this is enough. And that's the tipping point. That's where their brain is starting to realize, wait, this new messaging is starting to take over a little bit, and it's unfamiliar, and I want to fight it. And I tell them, if we can persevere through that, this is going to be smooth sailing, because you'll start to realize, and your body will start to realize, oh, this feels good. This isn't hurting me. This feels good, and I want to move forward. But there is that resistance piece. So you're right about the perseverance. It takes some grit.
Because it's not just one session thing, right? You're not gonna transform your life in just a session. It's a lifelong journey.
Yes,
It is.
exactly. I'm constantly learning about things there. Well, first of all, my standard for how I want to feel keeps going up, right? Where I used to tolerate like more bad days, and now I'm like, no, how can we transform out of this? And it keeps going up. And so I like that, though, because if I have even a little bit of reaction or triggered feelings, I want to dig down and figure out what that is. And I want to heal it. And I want to seek the help that I need to get through it, because I know what the other side looks like.
Right.
And it's freedom. It's feeling empowered in your own body and worth. And that you just don't ever want that to go away once you have it. So it's a lifelong journey, like you said.
It is powerful, powerful. Thank you so much. But before we end, we always end with final five rapid fire questions. So every question has
Oh,
to be answered in either one word or one sentence maximum. Are you ready?
oh, okay. Okay.
The first question is, what is one thing you wish you knew earlier?
Ooh, I think that our brains can change, that we don't have to put ourselves in a box. Um, Even what I just said right now, it's funny. I checked myself when I said I'm not a quick thinker. And my consciousness went, no, don't say that. What you could be, that's not necessarily true. So really, that we're malleable. I wish I knew how we could work with our minds earlier and change.
The second question is, if you could relive one day of your life, which day would it be?
Ooh, wow. Um, I recently went to Grenada, an island off of Venezuela, and I had a day there where we were in the jungle with my family. We were learning about how chocolate was made. We were walking on the cocoa beans and as they were drying in the sun. And we had this beautiful lunch overlooking the jungle, and just being around all that nature. I would definitely relive that day. I loved that day.
Wow, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
The next question is, if you could master one skill you don't currently have, what would it be?
Carpentry.
What?
I think it would be so wonderful to make beautiful things out of wood. And I would do it someday. I'm going to use the power tools and do the whole thing. I don't know why that came to mind. I have rarely thought about that. But I do think doing something artistic and with my hands, I'd love to be really good at something like that.
It's funny when you just mentioned about jungle, now you mentioned about carpentry. It's like,
I
it
know.
seems like your dream life is to live in the jungle and make things out of wood.
It does seem like that. And there is a part of me that could definitely be a hermit and live just connected to nature. I do love it. Yeah.
Right, the next question is, if you could instantly solve one world problem, what would it be?
Oh, I think I think it would go back to my mission on the world, which really is about self-love. I think if we all knew our value, that we really would not be so threatened by differences in perspective and differences in belief systems or religions or any of that. I think if we truly knew our value, I would love to solve that problem. And I'm working on it.
Yes, you are. And the last question is, what brings you the greatest joy?
Ooh, the smallest things can bring me such great joy. Hence looking over the jungle or making something out of wood or whatever it is. I can feel intense joy very easily, which I love. But I think laughing with my family or my loved ones, just about silly things, it brings me so much joy. I feel my heart opening right now just talking about it. So just having a good light laugh with people I love, joking around. That's what I love.
Beautiful. Now, again, tell my people where they can find you, where they can connect with you.
Yes, yeah. I have a free consult call over the phone, 20 minutes to talk about what you want to create, how you want to see and move your life in a different direction. Totally complimentary. So you can sign up for that on my website at julievcoaching.com. Also, that free Transform the Inner Critic workbook, Release the Inner Critic workbook, is on my website. It is releasing the inner critic, but really it's transforming it into an inner support. And it just walks you through the basic steps and some journaling. It's a beautiful guide. So that really can start the process in your life. And that's a free download on my website. And that's really I've been on some other podcasts. You can look me up on podcasts, but that's the way to connect with me.
Beautiful. Now, guys, go download your free guide. I'll put the link in the show note below. And I know you like today's episode because you are listening till the very end. So share this on your IG story or any of your social media. Share this with your friends and family and help them increase their self-worth and learn how to love themselves. And comment below and tell us what is your biggest takeaway from today's episode. And I will always leave you the same as I leave you with every other episode. Show up. The world needs you and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thank you again for tuning into Find Joy Joyan podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on your IG story and take Find Joy Joyan _podcast so I know you are listening. And leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already done so. And remember to hit the subscribe button whether you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or any of your other favorite platforms. If you love what we are doing and want to become one of our sponsors, you can send me a DM to connect. And thanks for being here. I will see you soon in the next episode.